Hey guys, it's your girl, Hateful Ho, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Twitter drama surrounding a young woman in Texas who I believe works in the legal field. I'm not sure if she's a lawyer or a prosecutor, or I'm not quite sure. But she had made a post talking about her and her boyfriend, who they had been friends for a long time, and they finally got together. And several men, a lot of what you'd call incels, decided they weren't very happy about that and saw him as a simp and saw him as being, and basically just projecting a lot of insecurities on this relationship. And she was getting a lot of hate, a lot of very cruel things were being said to her that I shall not repeat. And in response to that, eventually, to one of the men who was being really disgusting towards this woman, she called him a bullet bag, which is funny in hindsight because this is a group of men who are constantly telling us and everybody else that they're too sensitive, unless it's the issue of them, because they must be coddled, right? So this whole situation is going on, and they reached out to the bar and they reached out to all these resources to try to get her fired. And it was mostly a Black woman crusading in this, a problematic one at that, one who has been known on Twitter for essentially mammying for men who do not have any approval towards her whatsoever and would never date her. And so she decided to go on this crusade to kind of get her fired, try to get her in trouble. And it's quite sad that they are going to this level of extreme when there are countless numbers of men who are actually being really disgusting in our community right now, that are being supported, that are being financially supported, that are being represented, that are getting media attention, that are getting influence. There are countless numbers. And yet that is not enough of a reason to cancel any of these people. I mean, we barely canceled the baby. He was canceled for like 2 weeks. I mean, so we are entering some very dark times indeed, because now divestment is becoming more well-known. And that is putting a target on a lot of people's backs. So I will say, number one is that you need to really make sure that you are not sharing this kind of information about your divested path, any of that, to women that do not share the same ideas as you, because they aren't just people who will, hate on you or be jealous of you. These are people who could quite frankly see you as an enemy now and think that all bets are off and take all gloves off, and nobody can hurt you more than someone who looks like you. So be mindful of that. What I wanted to do, why I brought this whole story up, is because there was another story, I think Paris Milan was talking about it, about a woman who, there was a man on her Ring doorbell, right? Which is a doorbell where it has a camera in it, and you can actually see who is at your door, and you can, conversate with them through an app on your phone. There was a man who had been trying to get into the house and talk to this woman, and was being very lascivious, the way he was wagging his tongue at her and being quite disgusting. And as it turns out, that he'd been there before, and there was video evidence of him having been at her apartment another time prior. So it's quite scary to think about the fact that she is, first of all, a young woman who moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Houston, I believe. And she didn't have any friends. She doesn't really have her support system here. So she's vulnerable, and she has 2 small children, which makes you even more vulnerable. And he said he'd been watching her in the parking lot the end, which is weird. And so eventually she aired all of this out, only to find that there was a large segment of Black people who were upset with her, not only for airing him out, but thought that there was nothing wrong with this man, that he's just a little off, that he deserves the same, he deserves to be treated better. He wasn't doing anything that bad. And I think it says a lot. And things got worse. She made a GoFundMe so that way she could move, because the apartment complex was extremely unwilling to help her. It was basically like a hood apartment complex where the security guards just posted up in his car, smoking weed, smoking blunts. Doesn't help you as a woman feel safe. And I totally understand that. And so she's trying to move now, and she's struggling because her GoFundMe got taken down by these mammies who felt like she was lying and she was making a Black man look bad. And the man who, who did all this decided to do an interview with his janky ass friend. And first of all, let's talk about it. What is up with Black journalism? It needs to change, because I'm sick of these motherfuckers getting access to a camera, getting access to a podcast mic, using their phone and just posting all kinds of foolery and buffoonery with absolutely no content, no investigative. I mean, honestly, you can't have you can't have a quality journalistic base when you don't ask the critical questions: who, what, when, where, and why. Those are critical thinking questions that are absorbed and taught through reading for long periods of time. And I have to say, you can tell that a lot of these Black blogs and journalists, unfortunately, are not reading, and they have not since probably The Cat in the Hat. I digress. Back to the topic at hand. He did the interview, and the interview didn't make any sense. He was saying that he was just trying to talk to her so he could get into her house. He was going to bum rush the door because his phone was in there, and some guy that she was messing around with must have stole his phone, and it didn't quite add up. Because one, Find My iPhone does not detect what floor anyone's on. It can barely even detect where in the room something is, which is why you have to play the sound if you're trying to find something, trying to actually find your iPhone and you don't know where it is. But number two, I think also it sets up a very dangerous precedent. Why was he gonna bum rush like that? That was probably the only part of that sentence that felt like it was ringing true, In any case, he decides to do that. He decides to do the interview. A lot more people side with him, and I just kept thinking to myself, this is no different than the Tory Lanez situation with Megan. And I remember when that situation happened, and people that I knew were like, oh, well, people hate Tory Lanez. His music's garbage. He's corny. He's a short, lame dude, and he has short man syndrome. So this is going to be the final nail in the coffin. People already don't like him, so they have no reason to just let it go. And I knew that wasn't true, because people have so much vitriol for Black women, that they will side with anyone who displays any sense of hatred towards Black women, because they themselves actively do not like Black women. And they relate. And I was proven right. So, it's very telling, and I would not be surprised if this man became an IG celebrity and gained a bunch of followers following this whole situation. I'm willing to bet it. And so she went to the police. The police were very unhelpful. They had no empathy, no compassion for this woman and her children. She was in there being extremely vulnerable. You could tell she'd been crying. She seemed very upset. And this very clearly white woman said, well, I can't help you. Or, well, there's no way we can tell the future. There's no way we can predict the future. So if he does do something to you, how can we predict that? If he does something again, though, just go ahead and call us and we'll help. And that is the most BS. And Paris Milan really broke this down. So I would really suggest that you check out her video on that. But I wanted to add this at the end, why I brought up both of these stories. Both of these stories happened in Texas, right? I believe both of these stories happened in Houston. Either one happened in Dallas and the other happened in Houston, or the other way around, or they're both in the same city, if I remember correctly. And it's very telling to me that the same women who were upset that this single mother was being stalked and harassed, and were saying, where's the police? Where the police are the same people who, one, were protesting on behalf of Black men and sullying the image of Black women by doing so. And two, are the same people who tried to dox this Black woman who's in the Texas legal system. You would think that these people would be able to put two and two together and realize that one of these actions has an effect on the other. You were trying to get presumably one of the few Black women who work in the Texas legal field. You were trying to get one of the few Black women, presumably, in the Texas judiciary system to be fired, trying to get her doxxed, leaking all of her information out there. But you also want to act like y'all care about this single Black woman, single Black mother who is in a position where she's being stalked by a Black man, might I add. They don't understand how these two different situations are from the same rooted problem. How do you expect to be protected when the men are the ones who are preying on you? You're defending them. And not only are you defending them, you are actively coming for any Black woman who could be in a position to help you by just because she's not male identified, even though it's the males that should be concerned about. They are in your they are the direct proximity to violence that you might experience. The logic isn't there. And this continuation of fighting for these guys is the reason why this man felt comfortable to stalk this woman in the first place. It's all rooted in the same shit. They're being coddled. They're being coddled. They're grown men who are being fucking coddled. That's why the first thing they want to know about the woman that they're dating, besides if they got a fat ass and if they're attractive and if their hair is, curly or whatever, is if they can cook. Because they're a child and they just want to make sure that mama can take care of them. They're not men. This is not a community full of men. And I think that a lot of these women, because the divested movement is becoming such a definitive thing now, a lot of these women and a lot of the women who didn't divest and who went so hard and are mammies in 20 years when they're in their 40s are going to look back and they're going to see how a lot of us are doing, and they're going to have a lot of regrets. They're going to have a lot of regrets. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a rise of women, Black women, who are selling books to these women in the next 20 years to try to put them on game, to try to scam them too as well, because these women are going to be so lost and they're going to be so confused at 40 looking at us with our beautiful homes, our beautiful families, our beautiful lifestyles, because we didn't compromise. We didn't compromise what we thought we were worth, what we think Black women are collectively worth, what we deserve in a partner, in our lives, in our lifestyles. And truth be told, a lot of divested women are going to live longer. There's just going to be the next generation is going to be set up so differently, because we're going to see a massive gap between the women who divested and the women who didn't, and their children. So be prepared for that. And I do see that divestment is going to become more popular. It's going to be a much less controversial thing to say and become a lot more mainstream in the dialogue in the next 20 to 30 years, as a lot of us are still young that are in the divested movement. A lot of us are in our 20s. A lot of us aren't yet married. A lot of us are still figuring our careers out, or we're in school. So I think a lot of us are going to be setting the example for what divestment actually looks like in the next 20 years as a lot of us start getting married and doing all these great things in our lives. So, actions speak louder than words. So the next 20 years will be telling in a lot of ways. So that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know down below what you guys think, and be safe, and bye.